Ready?
Yes, ma'am. Go.
Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I need to get the agenda put up on the screen for if we don't mind, Mr. Chino. And welcome to tonight's City Commission meeting. I'm going to order on Tuesday, April 28th. We are now in our third official video-only City Commission meeting during this unprecedented time in our history. I'm going to ask the City Clerk if she will call roll for us.
Commissioner Abraham?
Present.
Commissioner McElroy?
Present.
Commissioner Watkins?
Present.
Commissioner Wilson? I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilson?
Can you hear me now? Present?
Yes. Mayor Harless?
Yes. I think we have some feedback going somewhere for most of us, Dan and Stephen, if you don't mind figuring that out. And I'm going to ask Commissioner McElroy, do you mind leading us in the invocation tonight?
I will, in my flustered state. Yes.
I will. I figured that could get us grounded a little.
Yeah. All right. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, we thank you for your goodness to us. Just looking out in creation is an encouragement in the midst of this pandemic, and we're thankful that it's spring and that life is sprouting all around us. We do pray for those that are ill, that are fighting this virus across this country, that you would heal them, protect and use our healthcare workers in mighty, miraculous ways, just take care of them and their families. And we do ask a blessing on leaders across the country, across the world, as they make decisions about how we move forward, how we take care of other healthcare concerns, and how we get people back to work and our economy going. We need your wisdom. We need your care. Show us how to help one another. We're grateful for a community that is so generous and is looking for so many ways to reach out and help, whether it's the Small Business Relief Fund, or getting groceries for a neighbor, or adopting a senior that's graduating. We're thankful, Father, and we pray that you continue to show us each how to do that in the lives that we're living, where we walk and where we live every day. And we do pray for this meeting tonight that we will make decisions that will be the very best for all of our citizens. And just give us your power, your wisdom, your strength. And we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we have actually any deletions or additions to the agenda, City Manager.
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and then next is the pledge. So will you guys join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? This is where you have to tilt your camera. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I think we're just going to have to be okay with never being in sync on that while we're on video call. So that's okay. All right, we're going to move into the consent agenda tonight, and the items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion unless a board member so chooses. Does anyone have anything they'd like to remove tonight from the consent agenda for discussion?
I do not.
Okay, I'm going to ask the city clerk to read the items recommended, please.
Approve minutes for the April 14th, 2020 called meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Paducah. Receive and file documents, personnel actions, a municipal order authorizing an application for a FY 2020 Certified Local Government Matching Grant Program through the Kentucky Heritage Council in the amount of $22,500 and authorizing the mayor to execute all documents related to same. Municipal order of the City of Paducah, Kentucky, authorizing the mayor to execute the deed consideration certificate for the transfer of real property located at 1400 Martin Luther King Drive and 501 North 14th Street, Paducah, Kentucky, to the Midtown Alliance of Neighbors. A municipal order authorizing the mayor to execute a grant application and all documents necessary for a coronavirus emergency supplemental funding grant through the U.S. Department of Justice in the amount of $34,145.75 to be used by the Paducah Police Department to purchase an unmanned aerial system. A municipal order authorizing the mayor to execute a grant application and all documents necessary for an FY 2020 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Accountability Grant through the U.S. Department of Justice in an amount of $13,094.65 to be used by the Paducah Police Department for the purchase of 5 handheld radios.
Great. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner McElroy,
Aye.
Commissioner Watkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. I do also just want to pause for a second and say thank you to the team for being very aggressive with their approach on grant funding. I think this is just a snapshot of what we'll see in the coming months as our team digs in deep to find grant opportunities for our community and for our city government as we continue to operate. So thank you all so much for your work on that. That's very exciting to me. As you guys might recall, last meeting we actually asked the city clerk to read all the items on the agenda so that we don't pass it back and forth like we typically do in person. So I'm going to ask the city clerk to read item 2A, please.
I move that a resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Paducah, Kentucky, supporting Beltline Electric Company, Incorporated, by rebating the 1% payroll tax on certain KEDFA program eligible positions," be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Catherine is on the call with us tonight. Catherine Beyer, our business development specialist, who's going to share with us a little bit about this project. It's come to my knowledge that this is actually kind of the end of an agreement that the former commission approved, and they had a 5-year window to actually move forward with their plans to expand. And so, Catherine, do you mind letting us know kind of where Beltline is and what they're up to?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Commissioners and Madam Mayor. I wanted to first wish you guys, I hope everybody's healthy at home. We actually have been in contact with the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority, and they are they've been communicating about the Kentucky Business Investment Incentive. That's the KBI incentive through the state. Heather Pierce with Greater Paducah Economic Development and I have been working together to review Beltline's expansion. This expansion project started in June of 2016. And before I kind of go into that, if you aren't familiar with Beltline, they are a heavy industrial and commercial contractor headquartered here in Paducah. Beltline has been serving the Paducah area since 1957. They're a great piece of our economic life here in Paducah, so we want to make sure that we recognize that expansion. This was a 35,000 square foot expansion on their actual building. That was $1.2 million that they invested into that expansion. It created 15 new full-time employees, and the average of hourly pay on that was $25.25 with a minimum amount of $10.88. They received back in 2016 a letter of support from Mayor Kaler. This letter of support puts them in the process of completing that expansion. They actually have completed that project now, so they are set to go in front of the KEDFA board meeting on June 30th, 2020, to have this pushed through at the state level. Before they can do that, they need city approval. So that's why you guys are hearing this today. They are eligible for a 1% payroll tax rebate for up to 5 years to be offered in conjunction with the KEDFA program that grants forgiveness of 3% state payroll tax. So I think that gives a good overview of it. I'll welcome that to answer any questions that you guys have on the project.
Oh, Commissioner Abraham, I think you're on mute or something. We can't hear. There you are. There you are.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, the 1%, 3% total, what would that total rebate be in dollars for them?
So that dollar amount, I think John Perkins, our finance director, is on the call as well. I'm going to lean on him to give you guys a little bit more on that.
Thank you, Catherine. This is John. Based on 15 new jobs at the $25 an hour average in a given year, if there's no, I don't know what the caps are per year, but that figures out at 1% about $8,000 per year for the city at 1%.
Mm.
And then the 3% is the state rebate that they receive.
Yes, ma'am. So that is the 3% for the state. And again, too, I don't know if this came up, but this would not be in effect until our fiscal year 2021. So it goes in front of the board at the end of June, on June 30th.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One thing that I think it is interesting for us to note, I've been, of course, worked very closely with Greater Paducah Economic Development. Since that letter that they received a kind of preliminary approval to Beltline 5 years ago, the program has changed significantly, and McCracken County is now considered an economic disadvantaged county, which means that in the future, if we ever have these opportunities to do these KBI programs, the state actually offers 5% rebate, and the city and or county does not have to offer anything. And so as we are thinking about deals that are on the table right now, that program has gotten a lot sweeter, if you'll say, for the economic development deals that are happening right now.
Good change.
Yeah, right?
Right.
Any other questions from the commission for Catherine or John? All right, I'm going to ask the city clerk to call roll, please.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner McElroy,
Aye.
Commissioner Watkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. And thank you to Beltline for your expansion in our community. You guys are definitely an economic driver. They have locations around the South, and they do a lot of big projects. So thank you for what you do for our economy. We are wanting to celebrate that now more than ever, I would say, as we're trying to see how we're going to come out of this. I'm going to ask the city clerk if she will now read item 3A.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance approving the recommendation of the Paducah Planning Commission and amending the Paducah zoning map for property located at 1128 and 1140 Broadway and 1143 Kentucky Avenue from B3 General Business Zone to the M2 Heavy Industrial Zone classification. This ordinance is summarized as follows. Rezone property located at 1128 and 1140 Broadway and 1143 Kentucky Avenue from the B1 General Business Zone to the M2 Heavy Industrial Zone classification and amending the Paducah zoning ordinance to affect such rezoning.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. This is the item we heard about last meeting. Actually, it was introduced. It is actually, I think you could consider this a possible expansion of a service that a business is offering on Broadway. And does anyone have any questions for our planning director on this item? All right. If not, I'm going to ask the city clerk to call roll, please.
Great. Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner McElroy,
Aye.
Commissioner Watkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. All right. Tamara, we can hear you. Maybe you
That's
meant for
funny.
that to happen. That's awesome. Little celebration goes a long way. All right, I'm going to ask the city clerk to read item 3B, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Chapter 106 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Paducah. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance amends Section 106-65 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Paducah to clarify the due date for fiscal year-end, non-calendar year-end business license filers and to correct certain grammatical errors. Said non-calendar year-end business license filers shall file the return and application on or before the 15th day of the 4th month following the close of the business entity's fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. John, I don't hear you over there whispering excitement
Oh, I gotta wait
like
till.
Tamara was.
I gotta wait till. You want to count my chickens?
That's all right. Does anyone have any questions for John? This is in relation to changing our business license due date. Thank you to the team for thinking outside the box on how we could support our local businesses. I'll tell you, as a local business owner, I was very thankful to have that extension so I could get my head on straight while I'm trying to figure out getting tax returns and all that stuff done. So does anyone have any questions about this item? Okay, I'm going to ask the city clerk to call roll, please.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner McElroy,
Aye.
Commissioner Watkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. And I'm going to ask the city clerk to read item 3C, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with Kroll Associates for endpoint IT protection services and threat monitoring in the amount of $45,000 for the Paducah Information Technology Department, and authorizing the finance director to transfer $45,000 from the administrative contingency account to the computer software account as funding for the professional services agreement. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance approves a professional services contract with Kroll Associates for endpoint IT protection in an amount of $45,000, including incident response, remediation services, Red Canary managed threat detection services, and carbon black endpoint sensors. Further, this ordinance approves a transfer of $45,000 from the administrative contingency account to the computer software account for payment to Kroll Associates.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I do actually have a follow-up question, if you guys don't mind. I did receive some messages from some people in our community that identified some other providers in our region that might have been able to service this. And if you don't mind, Stephen or John or even Jim, will you just describe the procurement process that we went through for this specific action so that we can all be on the same page with that?
Sure. You want me to take that, Jim, or? I think he's got himself muted, but
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Tito. You're fine.
sure. So whenever it was coming up time for us to decide what we were going to do for our endpoint protection, we solicited, or actually we didn't have to solicit anybody. We had a lot of people that had solicited us, you know, and they do every day. That's one of the things that we have to wade through is we get an avalanche of email. I'm sure you guys do too. But we had asked, you know, not only our current provider, but some of the other people that we have worked with, and we did ask local providers as well. And I know who you're talking about, and I've talked to them as well, and did not. And you know, it's one of those things we didn't know that they even provided that service. And so we've tried to, whenever possible, add those people into our contact list, and so that we can ask those people for feedback and to give us, you know, prices on this stuff. And that's one of the things that we did here is we reached out to multiple vendors to see what we could do. And like I said last time, this is it's easy to say, you know, this is comparing apples to apples, but it's not. Part of what you're also doing is the professional services and what those guys are providing, and how they react to your current environment and what you're already doing. And so it's a multi-piece. Yes, there's a software piece that we're paying for, but a large portion of that is the actual service and the response and threat detection and patch notes and updates and things of that nature. And so that's usually what we'll do is solicit from a couple of different vendors and see what we've got, and then we'll go back and discuss that with the city manager and make sure we're making a sound decision.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Chino or the team about this item? If not, I'm going to ask the city clerk to call roll, please.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner McElroy,
Aye.
Commissioner Watkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. And city clerk, do you mind reading item 4A?
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance accepting the bid of Jim Smith Contracting, LLC in the amount of $299,726.50 for the 24th Street Bridge Rehab Project, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for same and authorizing the finance director to transfer $90,000 from the MAP fund balance into the 24th Street Bridge Project account PF0007. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance authorizes the mayor to execute a contract with Jim Smith Contracting, LLC, in the amount of $299,726.50 for the 24th Street Bridge Rehab Project. Further, the finance director is authorized and instructed to transfer $90,000 from the MAP fund balance into the 24th Street Bridge Project account PF0077.
So moved.
Aye.
Second.
Oh,
Thank you.
It's also awkward.
All right. Well, I actually asked Jim to ask Mr. Murphy, and I think I saw you guys working on this beforehand, to give us an aerial shot of where this bridge is. It was not included in the item report on the agenda. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Commission, City Manager. If Lindsay, if you could bring the map up that's provided there, can we do that? Or Steve, can we do that?
yeah.
It's up there.
Okay, I can't see it. Okay, thank you. This area of town stretches, 24th Street goes from 28th Street over to 25th Street. It's over near Brooks Stadium. You can see Brooks Stadium to your upper right. It's one of our minor streets, but it does cross Cross Creek in the area. That bridge has been in place for probably greater than 50 years, and with all the flooding that we've had over the years, and more recently in 2018, we actually sustained some damage to the beams. If we could go down onto the street level, if that would be possible, can we do that? Yeah, you'll recognize the bridge there. Note the weight limit of 14 tons over to the right-hand side. Our bridges are inspected annually by the Kentucky Department of Transportation Cabinet, and this bridge has received low ratings over several years. So as we had the flood damage, I invited FEMA to come look at the bridge, and we were successful at procuring FEMA dollars to help us replace this bridge. Again, the price is $299,000 and some change from Smith. What will take place is physically that bridge deck will be removed. We will keep what we call the abutments, the bridge abutments, and we will put a new deck down on the existing abutments to maintain what we call the hydraulic opening. And basically all that is just the opening that is the area under the bridge that allows the water to flow under it. You know, some might ask, well, why don't you make the bridge longer? And the reason we wouldn't do that is because we would increase that opening. which means it would allow more flow to go downstream. Okay, and then some might say, well, why don't you make it smaller? Well, that would retain water upstream. So what we're doing is we're maintaining the hydraulic openings so that when we do have those horrific rainfall events, the flooding will not be changed from one event to another. And one thing also that we've done is we're going to put in a wider structure because, Mayor, as we attempt to connect neighborhoods and schools and parks, we're going to make this bridge wider such that you'll see a sidewalk on either side of this bridge, so that when we have the opportunity to connect sidewalks off in the distance, we have Elmwood Court. We have a lot of school-age children that come from Elmwood Court that walk to Morgan Elementary School, and this would provide a very safe pathway for them. So thinking in the future, while we're replacing this bridge, we would go ahead and put the extra width of the sidewalks on there such that when the time came that we could put sidewalks down 24th Street, the bridge would already be ready for them.
Great. I noticed in the breakdown of where the funds would come from for this project that I think the city will be spending about $30,000 from our actual funds, and the rest is coming from external sources. Is that close to correct?
About 35,000, Mayor, but yes, close to correct. State funds will be around 30,000, 31,000, and the balance of those will be coming from FEMA. But we are, since we are widening the bridge a little bit, we're using those additional dollars coming from the MAP reserve to enhance the bridge or make an improved structure so we can be prepared for the future, take advantage of this opportunity.
That's great. I do see a lot of trees growing up in that creek. Is that going to be an opportunity to clear some of that out?
Well, actually, that's a bunch of undergrowth. That picture was probably in 2012, maybe in the year on that picture. So as we capture these from Google Earth, they're not real time, but we do have some vegetation, but sometimes the vegetation is good to retain the bank to keep it from eroding.
Ah, okay.
Do we know when we'll start this project and how long it'll take?
Commissioner McElroy, I'm glad you asked that question. We have 120 days on the project, but the actual project itself, from the time they start, it'll probably only take them about 40 to 45 days to complete their project. But we give them notice to proceed, and then they call the bridge manufacturers, and you'll notice the different lines that are in the bridge. Each one of those is an individual beam. It's a beam and deck that's made together. And so it'll take about 8 to 10 weeks to build those beams. And so when the beams start arriving on trucks, we'll actually initiate the demolition just about a week before the beams get here, or maybe 2 weeks before the beams get here, and do the work to remove it, and then prepare for the beams to be set, such that the traveling public won't be disrupted too long. We will have to close 24th Street to put the bridge in, obviously. Okay, but we want to minimize that closure, so when we know the beams are on the way, we'll actually remove the bridge, put out a PSA, public service announcement, saying, hey, we're going to close it, we're going to replace it. But we'll minimize that time. Mm-hmm. And we actually look for this work to be taken in late July and August, which is actually the best time to be working on a bridge in our part of the country. Minimal rains.
Dry.
Commissioner Abraham's trying to ask a question, but for some reason he's not coming to the front.
Am I good?
Yeah,
there you
are.
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. No, I was just commenting on the sidewalk, addition of the sidewalks there. That, from here anyway, the road looks pretty narrow, and to get those guys out of the street on the sidewalk, that's definitely a safety concern.
Well, actually, Commissioner, what will take place is we'll actually have a barrier that separates the roadway from the sidewalk. If you drive out John Purrier, where the bridge goes over the railroad tracks over on the south side, where
Yeah.
there's the barrier and then there's the walkway. We'll have a short section of barrier there and a little transition that goes down that will actually provide a safe passage for the pedestrian.
Good.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? No? All right. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to comments from the city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As most of you guys are aware, we have been working on the budget process. Quote Audrey Herman, I know she's not on here, but she might be watching. She referred to our budget process as like Groundhog Day. You know, you get up in the morning, you do a budget meeting, you go to lunch, you do a budget meeting, you go home, you get up in the morning, you do a budget meeting, you go to lunch, do a budget meeting. So it's an ongoing process, but we're wrapping up the departmental submissions. We will be done with those tomorrow. We have engineering in the afternoon, and we have police in the morning. Then after that, the internal team will be working over some other funds, making sure that we have a good game plan in place to present to each of you when we have our individual commission meetings that start late next week. We start Thursday, Friday, and Saturday next week for those. So we're looking forward to having a nice proposed budget for you guys to see for FY21. And related to the budget, late this afternoon I also got a chance to get out to you guys kind of a summary of what we're looking at for the fourth quarter of FY20. Looking at the proposed, or I shouldn't say proposed, but the projected shortfall in revenues at $2.8 million, but how we're going to make up for those shortfalls in revenues by employing a lot of strategies. It really just kind of compliments to the team for being very creative and being very cooperative as we collaborate towards those strategies. So once you guys get a chance to look through that, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Michelle or John or Audra, and we could definitely give you more information as you guys desire. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jim.
Welcome.
I will jump in and start our commissioner comments if you all don't mind, because mine relate and my questions relate directly to what Jim just talked about, the budget. And as we kind of, we know that we're kind of crawling along in better understanding how the COVID-19 pandemic is going to impact the city government's budget. I actually talked to John a little bit about this afternoon. I was on the phone with J.D. Cheney last week from Kentucky League of Cities, and he had told me that they were looking, most cities he's talking to is using a 20 to 30% drop in their quarter 4 revenue projection. We went a little bit beyond that, and so I'm thankful that we're being very conservative with those numbers. I also want to say I did get a chance to look at that document, Jim and John and Michelle, and I am super impressed with the level of creativity and your willingness to dive in deep. I can see why it would have taken quite a bit of effort and time to go through as many of the different funds and line items that we have to find those solutions. And they all add up, as you see that in the document you sent us. So I'm thankful to see that on a conservative note, while we may have $2.8 million in shortfall in our revenues, that the actual gap will be closer to about $850,000, hopefully, by the time we make some of these adjustments. So thank you for your creativity. It does, I think, say a lot about our willingness to be flexible right now. We don't always get to be flexible in government, but I thank you guys for your really hard work in doing that. I wanted to ask you all, kind of as we move forward, this is the third document I think we've received kind of as a proposed mitigation strategy. We're thank you for the communication and keeping us updated on kind of the things you're doing internally. Do you see that kind of as the pathway forward on a fairly regular basis, being able to get us back this kind of update on where we think things are actually playing out? When can we start to see some of the data come in from the revenue? I think we're 2 months behind, is what I think I understand from understanding kind of where the revenue is. So, for example, for March revenue, we might not know until May or June. Can someone kind of give me a better understanding of that and maybe how we're going to communicate on a regular basis about where we are?
Yeah, I'll let John give you the particulars and specifics on it all really depends upon when a certain revenue comes in, if it's a quarterly payment, if it's a monthly payment, so on and so forth. But John, you want to kind of give her an update on when we'll kind of know what the fourth quarter looks like and how we can kind of compare that to what our projections were?
Right. Just use the example, the quarter that just ended March 31, that's not technically due until a couple of days from now. And we won't have that completely posted until the middle of May, end of May. So it just takes a lot of time. You know, it's not like you can get it on April 1st. And then the fourth quarter ends June 30, but it's not due until June or July 31st. And again, that's a real busy time for us at the end of the year, end of the fiscal, end of the month. And so what we will see, it'll take until sometime in the middle of the third week of August for us to know the results of that. We're talking about payroll tax, insurance premium tax, and then the one tax that normally we would have a pretty good idea of what we're going to have is the business license. And that's typically due the 15th of April. And as you know, that we pushed that out to July 15th, so we won't have any idea what that is until sometime, late August. So we just have to be patient and wait for some of the data to come in. Otherwise, we're just guessing. It's like Jim and I and City Manager and I and Michelle and Audrey, we've kidded around working on this stuff. It's like it's equivalent to solving an equation with 13 unknown variables, and so it's very, very difficult to get figure out exactly where we're going to be going next. But I think Jim has given us a really good roadmap on what we hope to do, and we hope that it turns out way better than we're expecting. But we're trying to be prepared for the absolute, maybe not the worst, but something in between.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate that. I do think it's important for us on these meetings to be talking about the budget probably more than we have typically talked about it. Well, we are in budget season, so that helps. I know we're all knee deep in that, but even for our community as we move past the budget season, to be setting a regular update for the commission, but also for the public on where we stand. I think monitoring this is more important than ever, and it does give us a chance as leadership to also be thinking about how do we adjust according to what we know. That's part of that unknown, but knowing that we put a process in place that we can follow, so we're not kind of leaving it to be without knowing, is important to me, and I'm sure it is to the other commissioners as well. So thank you both for your leadership. I'm going to pass the mic for anybody else who has any commissioner comments tonight, and then I'd like to just say a few thank yous before we jump off. Anyone else?
I just want to thank the city employees that are working so hard. I mean, look, I don't see a lot of yard debris, and I mean, landscaping looks wonderful in Paducah right now. Everybody's got time to work in their yard, but I have walked the neighborhoods, and it looks like we're doing a good job staying on top of that, getting our trash on time, police, the fire, everybody, our finance people, everybody. I just thank everybody for working hard. We appreciate that so much.
I agree.
I agree. I second that.
Yeah.
Looks good. Yeah. Thank you. And I know you have some more thank yous to give, Mayor, so that'd be great.
I do. If no one else has anything to add, I do want to just say thank you to all of those who've contributed to our Small Business Relief Fund. I know you all have been receiving the information as the donors have come through. CSI was very generous last week and gave $10,000. The Paducah Board of Realtors gave $5,000 last year. We have families giving funds. We have the Chamber. Thank you very much, Commissioner Wilson, to the Paducah Chamber and their board for the generous contribution of $5,000. BFW a couple weeks ago also gave $2,500. I know I got a message from the Greater Paducah Economic Development President that they will be contributing $2,500. And then today we heard from Kenny Hunt from A&K that he'll be contributing $5,000 to this fund. And so we are up to we're a little over $52,000 raised from our community, which, as you know, we're doubling that with the city funds. So we're over $100,000, and that will mean that another 50 businesses will get those $2,000 grants. Don't forget, our goal is actually $100,000 from the community, matched with another 100. So I'm going to keep hustling for it. I know you all are as well. And it's just incredible to see our community step up in such a way to support our small businesses during, as we just mentioned, this very uncertain time. So I am proud to be a Paducah, and I know you all are too. And thank you to the commissioners also for your service to our community. As you were praying, Commissioner McElroy, I was just thinking about that. You know, now more than ever is a time for us to demonstrate our servant leadership mentality that I know all of us have, because that's why we chose to run for office and serve our community. So thank you all for your service and for what you're doing. This is a very uneasy time to be in leadership, and sticking together and uniting as a community is more important, as you all know, than it ever has been. So I appreciate you all very sincerely. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I say, between the contributions from all the individuals and businesses to the Small Business Relief Fund, the money that the City of Paducah put in it, do we have enough grants for all those small businesses that actually applied for one?
My actual feed cut out, so I didn't hear the last part you said.
Do we have enough money in the Small Business Relief Fund between what the city put in and the private contributions from individuals and businesses? Do we have enough to meet all the grant requests from the different small businesses that applied for a grant?
That's a great question. So we had 305 applicants that applied to the program. In this first round, to find 75 businesses that were eligible, and I sent you all the frequently asked questions document this afternoon so you can kind of refresh what that looked like. But as they reviewed those applications and made sure people were compliant with business licenses and payroll taxes, it actually took about 112 of those applicants to be reviewed to get the first 75. And so the next review will be however many more businesses it takes to get to the next 50. So I don't know the answer to your question directly, because as they're going through that list, they are finding some businesses that are not eligible, and they haven't made it all the way through the list yet. So my hope is that by the time we're done with the full amount of funds, that we will have been able to grant the majority of people who applied. I want to make a quick note, since you brought this up. Part of the response as well, if someone gets a letter that says you were not funded in this first round due to your business license wasn't up to date for 2019 or your payroll tax you were owed, we are allowing them to reconcile those issues, and then we'll put them back into the pot. So that's an important piece. I think it's important for us to know as leaders, but also the community. For example, I had a business call me and say they did not get the funds in the first round because they owed $30 on payroll tax from last quarter. Well, they can easily pay $30 and turn around and get $2,000. And so it's worth it for them to do that. And so that's the kind of process that we've now put in play now that we've sent the first couple of checks, or the first 75 checks out. And again, these frequently asked questions are up on the website now, and we're going to be adding those questions and answers as we go along and get more questions from the community. So I hope that it'll be helpful for you all as you get questions, but also to the public as they're wondering how we've done the process.
Good. Mayor, I just scanned the Q&A. Did if they applied and they didn't get chosen in the first 75, do they have to are we going to open up the application process again, or are we going to keep going through the 305 that applied?
Correct. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, there is no open application right now. We're going to keep working through that list of 300 businesses and continue to write checks as we have the money and as we find eligible businesses in that list. The goal actually is to get this next round of businesses funded sometime by May 15th is the goal right now. And so Ty, our grants administrator, is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Our finance department worked over the last weekend, to do all of that work that's necessary to review those applications. So we're looking at May 15th as the next round. That will be 50 businesses to get the next round of checks, and then we'll just keep raising the money. And I hope another 3 to 4 weeks after that, we'll be able to do another 50, as long as we have the funds coming in from the community.
Great. Thank you.
I hope that clarifies. Okay, well, if no one else has anything, I'm going to actually make a motion to adjourn. I think we're at that point.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.